Well, I have great pleasure in introducing Mohammed Kola, Director from Adams Food Services, to our podcast today, Beyond the Boardroom. Welcome, Mo.
Thank you, Kerry. It's a pleasure to join you on your podcast.
Thank you. And looks like the surroundings look like it's a lovely day over where you are.
Yeah, it's absolutely glorious. I'm sat on my roof terrace at home, so yeah, absolutely enjoying the sun.
Oh, well, thank you very much for finding time to join me today in your busy schedule, because I absolutely understand how hectic life is at Adams Foods from our previous meetings. So I just wondered, firstly, Mo, if you wouldn't mind sharing information on Adams Foods and a little bit about your background that led you to become the director at Adams Foods.
Yeah, so Adams Food Service was started just over 40 years ago as a small corner shop. The background is actually quite inspiring. So I've only been part of the journey for about 5 years, but Adams started as a corner shop and where a World War II veteran who's the father and is still alive, is 101 years old now. Um, so that's the owner's original owner's father. Basically said, look, you've got your brothers are going different ways. There's five of you. I want you to all kind of work together and be so. Amjad, who a lot of people will know in your podcast, he was a marketing director at Yorkshire Building Society, and one of the other brothers worked on the railways as an engineer, and the other one had his own little electrical firm. And they all got together. Dad put his deposit down on this little corner shop, and we've kind of grown from there. The business has grown into the largest independent um, food service kind of wholesaler in its sector.
Fantastic. And service in the UK, is that right?
That's correct. Yes,
Yeah.
we service the UK. We've got 9 sites. So we've got a couple in Bradford, Leeds, Sheffield, Nottingham, Birmingham, Hull, Preston, and Liverpool.
Fantastic, thank you. And what about your background and how did you become a director at Adams Foods? Where did your career start?
Yeah, so I my career started in banking. So I've kind of worked for the Royal Bank of Scotland Group, for HSBC, and various other international banks. I left the bank to set up an accountancy firm with a close friend of mine. I exited the firm around 5 years ago, and that was it. That was technically retirement for me. I've known one of the founding brothers, Sajad Hussain, and one of the directors of the business, fellow directors, very well. And he said, "Look, why do you fancy coming across? We've got some challenges." And at that stage, I think it was a 6 month conversation. And at that stage, I was pretty adamant that we're going to stay friends and we're going to have loads of fun. And I'll come up every Thursday and have a coffee and a chat. And he said, "Look, just give it 3 months. Let's see how it goes. What's the worst that can happen?" And almost 5 years later, I'm still in the organisation. We've grown substantially, and there's
Yeah.
exciting things going on.
Oh, fantastic. Very influential chap, Sajjad, from the meetings that I've had. I can understand how that's happened and how you've evolved to be such an instrumental part of the business now. And just talking about that, how has Adams Foods managed to achieve the significant growth in this really competitive food service industry?
Yeah, so I think the key ingredients for any business are the people, the vision, and the people, and it's about creating a positive environment. I'm a firm believer in if you kind of have the right people in the right places and you have a positive environment, then you've got the key ingredients for success. Most and from a finance perspective, for cash flow is always a concern. So our model is quite a unique one where we don't actually have credit terms that we give the customer.
Mm.
So if I kind of explain it to you in Amazon terms,
Mm.
so from a business, what we do is we basically say to the customer, we'll give you the best price. However, you will have to pay us before the delivery comes to you or when the delivery comes to you.
Mm.
However, we negotiate terms with our suppliers, so maybe 30 days, 60 days. So we're always sat on a substantial amount of funds. So our
Mm.
customers will pay us for a bill 3 or 4 times over before we pay the first bill to the
Mm.
supplier. Very much like Amazon. You place your order, you pay them the money, and it might come the next day. For most of us now, we're on Prime and we pay the subscription, or it might come a few days later. So we've had a look at various models, and what that does is it helps you fuel growth. We've been in a relatively low interest rate economy, but we've been quite fortunate that we've been sat on substantial funds because of the way that we've operated. Our controls on cash and stock are very, very tight. So what I always say to everyone is, if you're looking at a business, if you've got a leaky bucket, no matter how much you put in, more's just going to pour out. So it's
Sure.
all about having the right people fixing the bucket, and that's what we've done, I think, quite well. There's always room for improvement, but we've had substantial growth over the last 5 years, so significant growth. So yeah, absolutely.
And I remember when I was speaking with Sajjad, he was talking about COVID and saying how COVID was a really good time for you in terms of that growth. That was a big part of the trajectory. Why was that?
Yeah, so initially when COVID happened, I mean, it was quite kind of fortunate. I joined the business just before COVID. We had this pandemic, and one of the first things I did is call a board meeting, and I said to my fellow directors that the first thing we're going to do, regardless of what happens, is we're going to make sure everybody's paid 100% of their salary. So it doesn't matter what happens with the wider economy. We're not
Mm,
100% sure what's going to happen with the government, but people have got bills, they've got mortgages, they've got school fees, they've got to live, so they're going to get paid 100%.
mhm,
If it means that the board has got to take a cut or not get paid for that period, that was the first thing. So ultimately, I think the aviation industry struggled with this, and it laid a load of people off, and
mm,
it's struggling to get back on its feet. You've got strikes, and you've got long queues at airports and so on.
yeah.
One of the first things that we did is put that in place. Subsequently, afterwards, in the initial thing, if you can remember, there was people like McDonald's, other organisations closing
Mm,
their doors. Literally, there was loads of places, Greg's, McDonald's, all the big boys were saying that we're closing. And at that stage, we were like, okay, so what do we do? And we are quite fortunate that we've got some really influential, really good close friends that said, look, ultimately we think you're part of the essential industry. You guys need to open
mm,
because people can eat. People still rely on deliveries. People still kind of rely on ordering the takeouts or
mm.
ordering. So we made a decision, and it was quite interesting because um, the local MP Naz Shah, she invited a film crew down. They came across, and we were just having a conversation. And they actually, in a previous life, they filmed kind of parts of Star Wars. So the
Right.
Star Wars film crew came down saying that Adams is open, guys. Make sure you keep on shopping. And we also made a decision at that stage to say that we've got to support the vulnerable. So we
Mm,
support food banks. Personally, myself, Sajjad, the other guys within the business, we were dropping off bags of rice and so on in an evening.
yeah.
So we were kind of quite, we were in the midst of it.
Oh.
And as the subsequent thing there was, we benefited from the fact that
Mm,
places were closed and we were still open. And the other thing that we did is at that stage, you had a lot of schools closing, hospitals were closing their doors, so they were stopped buying produce in from the suppliers. We actually turned around to our supply base and said, look, okay, we understand that it's a hard time at the moment. Most people are having a conversation with you to say that, look, can we delay payment? We were we were fortunate enough to be sat on a relatively substantial amount of
mm,
funds that we'd amassed and accumulated. So we said, look, if you want, we'll pay you up front. It's not a problem. We'll pay you up front because we know we're going to trade with you.
mm.
Whether the economy is slow or not, we'll pay you up front. And I think that's put us in a position where now the floodgates have opened. We've got stock on the shelves, and it kind of it becomes a, a kind of virtuous circle, really.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I do think it's how businesses adapt from an agility point of view, reaction, speed, when times are tried in those kind of environments. So I think, I always liked to hear that. I thought it was worthy of you sharing that. So obviously talking about the expansion, it's been huge expansion. Can you discuss any financial strategies that you implemented that you feel have played a crucial role in the expansion at Adams?
Yeah, so the first things I did is the family or the board needed somebody to come and kind of look after the finance
Hmm.
department. So the first thing we did is it was the biggest trading partnership that I've ever seen. So what that means is if you're talking to somebody internationally, a supplier, And you said, where Adams, or at that time we were called Sea Fresh. Yeah, so I'll go back to Sea Fresh. So we were a small little corner shop, and we kind of slowly found our way into seafood, and we were known as Sea Fresh. So locally, people knew that we sell everything, but most people hear the word Sea Fresh and assume you're a seafood supplier. So we changed, we
Mm.
kind of actually moved over to Adams. So the first thing was, um, you've got this huge company that technically doesn't have a has got a footprint with HMRC and the government, but doesn't have a footprint visibly in
Mm.
on Companies House. So we incorporated the partnership,
Okay.
which was, and the reason why it wasn't done previously to me joining is the fact that you've got all these suppliers that you've built a 40-year relationship or 35-year relationship with, and all of a sudden, if you're telling them we're going to go into a brand new entity with no history, and we want you to keep on doing what you're doing with us, it's a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
But we
Mm.
kind of gave them the comfort to say that, look, it's the same company, it's the same organization, but we just need to get into a vehicle that is primed for growth. And what that's done is, internationally, when we speak to our suppliers, we tell them who we are. Internet's everybody's best friend, so they go on the internet and they search up the company, and they can see we're a transparent company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the first things that I did when I joined the organization. We built a good team, so obviously not just myself, but the team kind of participated in the incorporation stages.
Mm-hmm.
We did that very successfully. We used local practitioners. A little shout out to Schofield Sweeney solicitors who helped us with
Mm-hmm.
that process as well, which was great. And then the second thing was, we started looking at stock controls, cash control, to say that, look, ultimately it's all well and good making the sales, the turnover, but what's happening? Are we getting damages? Are we have we got theft? Or how do we track this? And we basically tightened up the controls.
Okay.
I don't think there's many organisations, I've worked with quite a few, that have got the kind of stock control levels that we've got. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, if everything is tight at the back end, it gives you a good recipe for growth. And
Sure.
likewise, the strategies of no credit were implemented alongside the other directors. And at that time, I think various conversations we had with lecturers and so on, and they were saying that you guys are absolutely crazy. If you stop giving credit, you're going to go bust. And we were looking at Amazon, we were looking at other kind of organisations. We were thinking, look, we think we can make it work, but ultimately, if you stop something, you've got to compensate somewhere else.
Mm.
So it's the service side that we kind of really focus on. So yeah, that's one of the things, and one of the things I keep on saying to the staff, is, just imagine Rolls Royce. If it's got a widget or a screw missing,
Mm.
that car's not going to get built. The
Yeah.
same way, if one of your food service outlets, let's say there's a QSR, which is a quick service restaurant that supplies chicken burgers, for example. If the chicken's missing, you can have the lettuce, you can have the bun, but they're not going to be able to make any profit, or they're not going to be able to sell it. Likewise, if the bun's missing. So ultimately, what we've got to do is, if what we say we're going to deliver, when we're going to deliver it, in the
Yeah.
condition we're going to deliver it, we've got to do that.
Fantastic. And I'd love to hear more about the how you measure your service levels as well another time. But what I think people are going to be really keen to understand in this phase of growth, especially after you've implemented what you've implemented in terms of ensuring everything's tight, and when businesses go through rapid growth because of that, what have been the biggest, or has there been any big financial challenges that Adams faced during that growth phase, and,
Yeah,
and and what did you do to address them?
yeah. So the financial challenges are always, okay. How do you fund the growth? And we've
Mm.
been quite fortunate in being able to kind of run a tight enough ship to understand
Hmm.
that cash. I think I'll probably turn it around. The key thing, so the ingredients. If you're baking a cake, the ingredient that I still feel that we've got missing is the right people.
Hmm.
So we've got the cash, we've got the ability to kind of grow. The sites, we can find them. We bought a B&Q site about a year ago in Preston, which is a 50,000 square foot site. Amazing, with loads of parking, and that's going to turn into Adams in the next kind of few months. I think it's all about the people. So what usually tends to happen at this size? So everybody talks about the growth from small, so SME space,
Mm.
small, medium, and everybody talks about large corporates. What people don't talk about is how you get from a large to a
Mm.
corporate, and
Hmm.
I think there's a missing gap there. And most of the time, you're kind of feeling your way around that space. So you don't have various things like you don't have a HR department, you don't have a
Mm.
full credit control department. Everything is in very much somebody looking after two or three departments, and that's you got to start to decouple that. And you'll know
Mm.
from your experience at Castle and the kind of the recruitment space is that quality of person, and
Mm.
not just the quality of the cultural fit. How you manage that, and that I feel that that's the hard bit. That's the bit that I kind of really struggle with. And as an organisation, we've got some amazing people that have grown up with the company. We've got some amazing people we've brought in, but I
Mm.
think it's that recruitment side of things that we kind of.
Yeah.
That's probably, if she said, what stops you from being £1 billion business? Um, so yeah, strategic kind of direction, but I think it's the people.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you. And obviously, most business owners, boards of directors are talking about AI, automation, software that would probably ultimately mean that that frustration of finding the right person as well could be alleviated slightly. So, talking about financial tools or software that you've implemented within the business in the growth stage, is there any tools or software or ideas that you had that you feel it's really useful to share?
Yeah, absolutely. We're very fortunate because the managing director is an ex-IT lecturer. So he's an information systems lecturer, but he comes from an accountancy background. So his story is a unique one in itself, where he was doing software services to fund himself through university. And he found that, and he was doing an accountancy degree. So
Right.
he studied accountancy, did software, was very, very good at software and IT, and he's got a business logic background because of the accountancy. And we've built our own ER. So most companies our size, what would happen is they would buy something off the peg and they'd change their
Mm.
systems
Hmm.
and way of working to match the IT platform. We're slightly different where our IT platform matches the people and the way that we
Hmm.
work. So it's like having a tailored suit, really, to say that okay, we've got a little bit of wriggle room here, but we kind of need to kind of adjust it out a little bit here. And we've kind of devised our own software. We've got AI guys internally as well. So we have got a specialist IT division which manages app development. So again, probably kind of best in class. So we're looking at AI. We've got AI specialists that we take straight out of university, show them what we want to do in a way that we said, look, okay, we're not going to give you the whole of the jigsaw, the picture. We're going to give you bite-sized bits, and they've created something, and it's very unique. So we've got a app. 40% of our customers use our app. 50% of the business that we do is now delivered. So that's COVID kind of pushed us towards the delivery
Sure.
model more so than the
Mm.
cash and carry, and then
Hmm.
10% of people walk in on a normal basis. So we've kind
Hmm.
of pivoted the business quite well. But
Mm.
the AI space is very interesting where we've got suggestions. Our app says, okay, this is not available. But again, going back to the production line, to say this is not available, but we'll give you a very, very close alternative. And this is the match. And our
Oh,
AI
right.
engine
Okay.
picks all that up. And also the AI engine cross sells. So let's say we had a pizza shop owner that's buying the pizza boxes, that's buying the pizza cheese, but not the pizza flour. Then the AI basically will say, okay, actually, I've got a customer here that's potentially can buy the flour. We're going to go below cost, offer him something he can't refuse, and get him used to the flour. And we work with our suppliers to say that we can actually really target and drill down onto our customer base. So yeah, I'm still a believer in good people. So one of the things that I actually said to the guys is, look, if I can have a good system and poor people, or I can have pen and paper and good people. I take the good people and pen and paper any day.
Sure.
Yeah,
It's a hard balance though, isn't it? I think we're gonna, it's always good to have the people. If you've got the software alongside them, then you're in a really strong position, aren't you? And I think it always sounds like that when you talk about what's happening with you guys keeping up with the pace of the growth. I think is often just as hard as anything else. And just talking about advice from you for other aspiring finance professionals, do you have any advice that you would give them if they wanted to make a significant impact in their organisation?
Yeah, so and I would say that I'm slightly biased, but I'd say, look, finance is at the heart of any organization. The numbers tell a story, and ultimately, when you look at the corporate finance space, or when you look my previous life in banking, you could develop a very good picture of an organization even before you walked in, to say that, look, this is a well-run organization, or this is kind of just on the numbers. And I think for finance professionals to kind of stand, they've learned the theory, to stand behind that theory and just to look at it and explore and push out, because you've got the merchants. So the double data entry bookkeeping, which is a core fundamental principle, the merchants in Venice, the kind of the entrepreneurs put that together to actually make things balance and to kind of keep records of stuff, and they were innovative. So innovation is key, and I think the UK do that well. And
Right.
ultimately, just because we did something a certain way, when I came, I've not got any food service background. I come from a purely financial institution, but I've always walked around and said, "Okay, guys, you're doing it this way. Why are you doing it that way?" And a lot of the time, people say, "Oh, we've always done it that way, and everybody does it that way," but it doesn't make it the right way.
No,
So
no.
ultimately, challenge the norms.
Challenging, get involved in the operations, understanding every part of it is just crucial, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And once you start challenging the norms, I think you kind of start finding a way of making a difference. And
Yeah.
it's about understanding. So I think being sat in the finance office in an ivory tower is not ever helpful. You've got to see what the challenges are on the ground, because you could make a
Absolutely.
decision to say that, okay, we're going to turn the heating off. It's going to cost us a lot of money. But then the guys in the warehouse are freezing, and you walk around and you think, I feel really sorry for these guys. But it's little things like that. That's probably kind of
Yeah.
very simple example, but
Oh,
various things like
yeah.
that. To actually, the
Okay.
human aspect has to come into financial
Yeah.
decisions.
Understanding what the numbers actually mean. So, in terms of Adams and the future, what are the financial goals for the business, and do you have a plan to achieve them? How are you going to achieve what your plan
Yeah,
is?
absolutely. So I say this kind of not. I tend not to share this number because it scares people, but I keep on saying to Saj and the rest of the directors that I genuinely can see a £1 billion business. You know, there's a couple of conversations that we're having to kind of roll out very, very quickly. That will probably transpire in the next few weeks, and if it does, then you'll be hearing about it. So we've got some exciting conversations going on at the moment. As a business, we're organically growing, but we're looking at a fast track growth plan. Again, I retired. I technically retired once. I probably want to retire again at some stage. And ultimately to do that, I've got to hit certain goals.
Hmm.
And the one of those is, it's unfortunately, as a child, I was one of those kids that like to take things apart and then put it back together again to see how things work. And ultimately, I think what that gives you is an inquisitive mind. And once you kind of have that bug to get the growth, and the reality of it is, genuinely, I think none of the directors in the business, I think our lives, yes, they could change slightly, but it's about what we can give back to the communities and the
Yeah.
people around us, and that really does drive us. And we've got
Oh,
some
it's
really good examples of that, like Bill Gates and you know Warren Buffett and people like that have kind of got big legacies that they've left behind, and the kind of philanthropic work that they do. And we hope to be in that kind of, maybe not at the same level, but somewhere along that. Yeah.
Oh, well, and one of the reasons why I was so grateful for you to join me today was when I met you and Saj and heard everything that you've shared with me today on this podcast, and understanding the journey of the company, all of the insights into Adams Foods and your own career. You can absolutely tell that Adams are a people place, really passionate about the people that they serve and that they employ. And I feel really lucky that I met Saj at a chamber event some months ago, and that we're in touch, because it's a business that we're really proud to partner with. And I'm super grateful that you've joined me today on Beyond the Boardroom podcast, which will absolutely be inspiring business leaders across Yorkshire when we share it.
No, that's absolutely great, and I look forward to hearing your story. I know that you've given me snippets of how you've the kind of grown castle and the kind of different things that you do. And I think I really kind of admire and the amount of things that we learned from you that day that you kind of came to see us. So that I think that's what it's about, that kind of virtuous circle and learning from each other.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Mo.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for
Thank you,
joining me
Kerry.
today. Thanks.
Thank you.